Thank you, Mariel. Maybe we can just go through quickly brief introductions, but I'm Jim Alexander. I'm with BOINGO Wireless, and we're pleased to be here. I think this is our third event this year. Many of you may know us as the entity that provides wireless connectivity to airports, which is really a core vertical of ours. We do a number of other verticals as well. We do sports and entertainment. The reason we're here is commercial real estate is really sort of a new growth area for us and of particular interest. And so I guess the best way to look at it is BOINGO is a partner that manages, we design, we install, manage, own and operate wireless transport networks within buildings, and that can be licensed, unlicensed services, public safety as well. So, Mike? Yep.
I am not Glenn Hicks. He's my better looking model stand-in for the photo back there. But my name is Mike Petrusky. I am with iOFFICE. We are a SaaS software solution and integrated workforce and workplace management system. We feel like we're a bit of the grandparent in the room. I'm very excited to be here, and it's so great. It's a great time to be in real estate, and with technology rapidly advancing today, so many exciting startups out here. We've been around for 16 years, bootstrapped and organically grown, originally as a work order program, but as the marketplace has changed and as the needs of corporate occupiers has changed and the trends towards workplace experience and elevating the employee experience has become a priority for many businesses, we have found a way to interact with that group of customers and are excited to share our tool to help them deliver on the promise of better employee engagement and experience.
I'm Steve Minden. I'm with Tishman Speyer. I work in their design and construction section, mostly at the moment on projects here in San Francisco. And my involvement in technology is mostly in design and construction, working closely with our property management, leasing, and development folks.
My name is Sacharow. I'm from Quantcast. We're an AI marketing firm. I manage the workplace team for North America and APAC, specialize in various real estate and employee engagement projects. I'm here to give sort of the tenant perspective on a lot of these initiatives.
And hi, I'm Alan Preger. I'm a partner at Borealis Ventures, and we're early stage investors in the built environment. So our focus is construction technology and smart building and real estate technology. Borealis are long-time investors in the space. And I actually graduated from one of the companies I co-founded, Borealis, and participated in several rounds at Newforma, and joined Borealis about a year and a half ago to launch a new fund focused exclusively on the built environment.
So with that, I think on the subject of building tech, I'm going to ask a question to the panelists, and I think if we could just each take turns answering this. In what aspects of the built environment do each of you see technology making the greatest impact now? And I say that on the subject of, for example, Internet of Things, the in-building experience, security, design, data management, and the like. I guess, Alan, Mike, go ahead.
I was going to say,
yep.
We are seeing that the focus of those trends is something that it needs to be framed in a way that focuses on a more holistic view of what I call the workplace, what we call the workplace. I think traditionally we've thought of the workplace as the space, the building, the asset, but in today's world we have a digital component as well as a cultural component of workplace, and taking all of that incredible data and information that we have available to us now and these incredible tools to examine that data and analyze it, and with AI being able to process it very fast, we need to put it in a way that allows us to look at the insight gained and then make actionable decisions that are focused on the people, the human element. Because many of you in the room probably know of the JLL cost of real estate calculator with the 330, 300 framework that talks about for every $3 per square foot per year of utility expense, we've got $30 in lease expenses and then $300 in payroll expenses. So what we've discovered at iOFFICE is that focusing on that 300 piece can give us some incredible opportunities for improved efficiency and productivity and greater business outcomes.
And Steve, from Tishman's perspective, the greatest impact now?
So I think a lot of the A lot of the impact continues to be in the area of energy and facility management, but expanded because of the greater ability to capture data. We're starting to see a movement in our company towards putting a lot more sensors in buildings to collect data of all kinds to improve the physical environment, which is something that tenants are looking for. And also just various types of maybe older technologies that still allow us to save a lot of energy. So those are the main areas I see.
Yeah, mine are a little more general. I think the growing trend for mobile workforces, coupled with space utilization technology we heard a lot about earlier, it's making us really rethink the way the office is defined. I think the days where your first day you're shown to your desk, and that's kind of behind us, or at least on the way out. We're entering an age where you'll get a backpack and a laptop, and you'll be shown around the office and told to work the way you want to work. These kind of dynamic environments and understanding the way that our employees are using these environments in real time and being able to proactively change things going forward is going to really not only define the way that we start building offices, but also start the way we plan our future lease expansions and the way we decide that we need to really embrace employee feedback, both directly and indirectly.
Yeah, and I think I'll take a little different spin on this. As investors, what's got us really excited about this moment in time is, obviously we've got this incredible convergence of technologies, new enabling technology in the built environment that we haven't had. Robotics, AI, IoT, AR, VR. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And things like BIM and web and mobile, they're like yesterday. They're so commonplace, but they're ubiquitous as a platform for all these new technologies. And I think as a corporate real estate professional or as a construction professional, it's often daunting just to sort of figure out, well, where do I start? How do I get started with all this? I've got a limited capital budget, and there's all this great opportunity and all this great technology. And I think what we look for as an investor is, and this is again looking through the lens of an investor at startup company, is not someone that's just building tech for tech's sake, but someone that's got a kind of a vertically integrated strategy that's a sustainable strategy for growth, but one that's also understandable by the construction or the real estate or the end user customer that's going to implement it, and it's implementable. And I think an example like that's great, and one that continues to scale is WeWork, right? So they started with often space as a service primarily to sort of startup companies and kind of mimicking the culture that you had in Google and some of these others that you read about, that and making it available to state-owned industries and other professionals from other industries, and it was easy to approach. And now they've actually acquired one of our startup companies, Fieldlens, a punch list app, because they're getting into the construction side. They kind of own the whole process. They're vertically integrated. And recently, with the announcement providing now design services for UBS and expanding through the whole workflow. And it just makes it a really easy decision for the customer to make when it's packaged that way, and it's not, gee, I want to implement IoT to better manage my corporate real estate.
So I'm just gonna add too that I think from BOINGO's perspective, the wireless transport in commercial real estate buildings, simply it's connectivity for all of those who traffic through, work, reside in a building, and that connectivity is something that people have termed the fourth utility. It's becoming more and more vital, and it's becoming more and more vital not just because people are communicating with people, but because, as I think some on this panel have outlined, devices with devices. The Internet of Things is something that is sort of ominous, but it's right around the corner for all of us. And so where BOINGO really comes in is as a partner, world-class in maintaining and operating networks of this sort, and we're in lockstep with the technologies that are going to be deployed. And so we represent that partnership there. I'm just going to move on into the subject of energy efficiency and sustainability, and this is a question for Steve. From Tishman Speyer's perspective, how are you using technology to optimize energy efficiency and improve the bottom line of your buildings currently?
Yeah, so we, as a basic company standard, all of our buildings now are designed to LEED Gold or better, and that bar keeps going up. So we're using a number of tools, and we're doing a number of things. We have a software called Mock that we use to monitor all our buildings in real time and gives, every 15 minutes feedback on the energy profiles of each building and identifies trends so that we can anticipate, peaks and also identify abnormalities, which help our engineers, address things proactively. So that's a simple, but very useful tool. We just did a pilot project in one of our properties in LA in Beverly Hills where we installed battery storage, which allows us to reduce peak loads. And in LA, they have the rate during the summer in afternoons is like triple the normal electricity rate. And we've partnered with a company called STEM, which has invested they're an energy performance company. They've provided the capital for the batteries, and they share the savings with us. So for essentially zero investment, we're seeing a share of savings on the order of $20,000 a year at just one single property. And, that can obviously be scaled up a lot. So, and especially as renewables, become more and more a bigger portion of the total energy grid, especially here in California, the whole question of storage and peaks and stuff is more and more important. So we're very hopeful about that. And then more recently, I'm working on a project right now, a very large project called Mission Rock, where we're partnered with the San Francisco Giants to develop a large piece of property right next to the Giants Stadium. And we're going to be putting in a district energy plan and creating actually an eco-district, which will take advantage of a lot of synergies and diversity between residential and commercial buildings, coupled with using water from the bay as a cooling source for some very significant energy savings. And the goal of that project is actually to be 100% renewable energy and essentially eliminating natural gas. And we're finding that we're going to be able to achieve that goal essentially for no premium cost over sort of the business as usual case, which we think is pretty exciting.
Steve, thank you. And so this next question, Alan, is for you. And I think, as an investor, looking at prefab, modular construction, and workspace sharing, how is prefab and modular construction changing the game both for commercial real estate professionals as well as for occupiers and residents?
Thanks. That's a good question. If you look at the construction industry and how we build, it's sort of like the automobile industry before Henry Ford came along. We build, everything's individually built by a team of skilled craftsmen, right? And it's slow, it's tedious, it's expensive, and what really kind of excites us about this moment in time is we think construction is about to hit its industrial revolution. And obviously the technology has a lot to do with it. So there's a lot of incredible technology. BIM, as I mentioned before, it's commonplace now. It's just here, connectivity. So we have the ability to do these processes off-site. But it's more than just that. It's really the entrepreneurs who are sort of creating these vertically integrated business models, and they're all vying to be that Henry Ford in the construction space, because the stakes are high, right? If you can take the labor off-site, that's 30%. If you can predict when you're going to have the building in place, like you can predict when that automobile is going to roll off
So
the production line.
greater predictability. Yeah.
It's money, right? I mean, that's just incredible. So one of the companies we invest in is a company called Blockable, and they're based up in Seattle. We invested with Paul Allen, Vulcan Ventures, big developer in Seattle. Basically what they're doing is they're providing housing as a service, and manufacturing is part of it, but they're also, they're manufacturing these 260 square foot smart, buildings. They're like, manufactured the same way this phone would be manufactured, and they can be snapped and clicked together on site. And what we like about it is that they're targeting a very specific problem, and it's a painful problem. It's a problem of affordable housing and transitional housing for homeless people. That it's afflicting every major city up and down the West Coast in particular, but also across the country. So we see the impact of this for developers, obviously predictability, cost, schedule. The impact for the residents, these are smart buildings. They are remotely monitored for air quality, life safety, and this is really the future. And Blockable is just sort of one example. We've seen other companies that are building, in fact, one that's going to be building a 40-story tower. 95% of the work is going to be done off-site. If you think of the 30% labor reduction and the quality of the end product and the predictability, so a developer can say, I'd like my high-rise to arrive in March of 2022, and it's going to happen.
That's amazing. I mean, we've seen that in the residential sector take place over recent decades, but to think that, in large commercial real estate that would
Yeah,
unfold.
I mean, we're right on the forefront of that happening, and there's probably going to be some spectacular failures, but I think there were some spectacular failures with some of the first automobiles that were mass-produced. But the bottom line is we need to add capacity for 3 billion new urban residents by 2050, and it ain't going to happen the way we've done it in the past. It just can't scale. And I think how we use the space more effectively, some of the presentations you'll hear today, just co-working and sharing of space, but also just identifying where space is underutilized, that's important. But also putting space in place efficiently is going to play a huge role. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So Ari, a question for you on the subject of user experience and space utilization. Today, people are connected through technology in all aspects of their lives, obviously, and how do you see CRE professionals preparing building environments to engage companies and meet new expectations?
Yeah, I would say, short answer, flexible, dynamic, and modular. It's funny you mentioned Henry Ford. Our approach to commercial spaces for a long time was, you can get it in any color you want as long as it's black. And that's not what people want. That's not how people work. And in my company, as is a growing trend among a lot of, especially tech industries, our commercial real estate function actually rolls into HR rather than finance. And that change that our mission aligns with HR, and that our responsibility is to attract and retain and engage employees in every step of the business, makes us rethink the way that we have to approach spaces. Headcounts, especially among tech companies, can change instantly. A news cycle can change a company from growth to hypergrowth to contraction. And we have to be able to have spaces that can adapt to that growing change. If you have a floor with 100 desks on it and 50 people are working currently, plans for 75, contracts to 40, and then half of them are working remote, it's a ghost town. So you have to be able to adjust the spaces based off of the way that employees want to use it. A big piece that we'll see more and more of, I believe, is I mentioned the indirect feedback from employees. So based off of their actual usage, having to adjust the way that you're building out your spaces. And I think you see a lot more reliance on, rather than necessarily built environments, but maybe furniture environments, so that employees can change it to their work style. We have to have environments so that employees can have, whether they want a low-tech space, a high-tech space, a combination of both, private spaces, public spaces, and areas for collaboration and personal work. All of these things are changing the way that we have to approach built-out spaces, because the last thing I want to be able, or I want to have to tell my CEO says, we need a space that does this. Well, that's going to cost 3 times as much because we made this decision early. And so that approach and that foresight that we have to put into every built environment is changing the way we're approaching things.
Thanks, Ari. So Mike, from your perspective, looking at quantifying space utilization, what do you think as far as being more effective that way?
Well, to piggyback on what Ari just said, I mean, that was, thanks for teeing it up for me. That was perfect. We are seeing the same thing, and I personally have seen a lot of this. I host a podcast, a weekly show called the Workplace Innovator Podcast. Find it on Apple, Spotify, wherever fine podcasts are available. But the privilege I have is to speak to industry leaders and book authors and corporate real estate and facility management directors. So I get to see this entire kind of view of the global workplace and the built environment from the entire life cycle of the asset to the actual occupants, you know, the handing over of the facility, and then taking care of our occupants and the users and the user experience. So all these topics that we're talking about here come up again and again, and it's so exciting to be here in San Francisco, in the Silicon Valley. I've talked to many of some of the big brands that are represented here on my show, and to hear these incredibly forward-thinking companies share what they've done and the mistakes they've made and the adjustments and the corrections they've made. There's constant flow and constant change, and we're in evolutionary times. Some would say revolutionary times. So it's, what I would say is, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Whatever you're doing, if you're a corporate real estate director or a facility management director, there's an incredible opportunity, first and foremost, to take the lead and in your organization and your corporation to really look around and find out what problems you're going to solve. I think somebody in the last panel mentioned that the first step needs to be looking inward at our companies, our organizations, and saying, what are we trying to do here? Before we go out and look at all the cool tech toys that are available, find out what we need to gain, what are our goals, what's the business outcome we're looking for first and foremost, and then say, let's look outward and see what tech tools are available to help us achieve that. And again, no one solution or one philosophy or one business strategy, workplace strategy fits all organizations. So we have to understand what type of work you're doing, what your environment is like. Some of the things Steve said about these communities that are building up. Some of these corporate campuses have built incredible mini cities that are very smart and very amazing to be visit and be a part of, and I've had the privilege to do that. So just, there's so much out there, so much knowledge sharing going on through podcasts, blogs, webinars, that you can just take a moment out of your day and kind of become that workplace leader that is needed to take us into the future of work.
So, well, thank you. So looking at technology and how people today in the CRE environment connect with one another and connect with their spaces, how do you each, and we'll just go through each of you, how do you each see technology continuing to enhance this sort of equation in the coming years? Go
Well,
ahead.
I'll just
Go ahead,
continue and say that I'm excited to see what happens, because we are human beings. I think somebody, again, on the last panel, not to be repetitive, but talked about that inherent problem of human beings. We have that resistance to change, right? We don't like to be the one to take the risk and maybe potentially fail. But I think we need to be given permission to do that and experiment and try new technologies, new solutions, and find out what is the right fit for our organizations. So I am excited to see where things go. What's going to be the workplace or the real estate equivalent of the iPhone or the smartphone? Because 10 years ago, I'll be honest, I was a BlackBerry user for a long time, and I resisted the change to iPhone or the app-based, format. Anybody else out there who can relate to that? It was like, I love that keypad. I'm not going to give it up. Well, eventually I did, and now, not a little more than 10 years later, it's an extension of my arm, right? The iPhone is just there, and all the apps and all the consumer-friendly, very user-friendly experiences that I get through those apps is something I just expect each day. So that's a revolutionary change in the way I run my business life and my personal life. So the intersection of technology in our personal and work lives, I think there's going to be a blurring of that line, and we need to have tech tools that allow us to continue what we expect in our personal lives to be a very consumer-friendly experience in our work lives as well.
Yeah. Steve?
So I'm going to take a little bit broader definition of technology. You know, we're thinking in terms of electronics and data and communication, but when you step back and look at the bigger picture, I think the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges we face really is sustainability and adapting to climate change and all the things that brings with it. I mean, right now, we're seeing a lot of growth here in San Francisco. At the same time, we're seeing land that was very marginal, particularly coastal land on the waterfront, as now being redeveloped. And there's all kinds of challenges associated with that, from sea level rise to seismic resilience and things like that. These are huge issues, and they're not easy to solve. They take huge amounts of money, and they're going to take technology. They're going to take new solutions. At the same time, we're dealing with institutional inertia, shall we say. You know, it's one thing to talk about all this great technology, but then you sit in a meeting with Public Works, and they don't want to even talk about using a different pavement material or, you know, some geotechnical thing that they've never heard of that's really vital to making a project viable. So I think there's going to be a real challenge in identifying, adapting, and using some technologies that maybe are not even that new, but using them in new ways to solve these really important problems. And then working on the soft side of it, to work with institutions and people and that legal frameworks, all those kind of things, codes, to make them work.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a transition over the next 5 years might be a short time, but over the next several years, that we start having adaptive workplaces not just on the macro level but on the micro level. Changes and AI will start to be more prevalent, especially among things like temperature controls. Maybe a temperature control for some individuals is different than others. So you'll see, based off of the individual user, maybe dynamically and proactively, these environments change based off of who's in a conference room, based off of who's in a seated area, based off of desk reservations. And I also think that from a user perspective, we are becoming incredibly spoiled. If I start to type something in Google and it doesn't predict what I want to search in the next 3 lines, I get frustrated. And you see that from my customers constantly. If we aren't anticipating their needs before they have it, it's a problem. And so I think more and more we'll see technology begin to really, there was talks earlier about trying to synchronize data between various technology firms. And I think these synchronizations will allow us to have a better user environment for everyone, which will allow increased productivity and increased employee retention, all of these incredible things.
All right, thank you. Alan?
Thank you, and yeah, really good question. So I'm going to piggyback what Steve was saying, because I mean, the challenges are huge, right? And if you add on top of that just the projections, I referenced this, not to repeat myself, but just for population growth and the composition of that growth, which 90% is going to be urban city centers, right? And so there's some really positive things happening in terms of flexibility and housing and workspace sharing that's going to help us make better use of the space that's already developed. But the fact is, we will need to develop 13,000 buildings a day. Shocking, right? And buildings consuming 40% of the, or generating 40% of the CO2 emissions, I think, worldwide. So the work that Steve's doing and everybody that's involved in any kind of sustainability is going to be essential. What gives us hope, though, is, and this is why we made the decision, kind of a risky decision, to dedicate a fund specifically to this built environment space, having 3 previous funds that were more diversified VC funds. This one will only look at the built environment, is that in the space of about, 14 months, and we haven't even really announced that we're open for business, we've seen over 1,000 startups, okay, that are doing work in this space, in the built environment space. And this is the next generation, right? These people are closer to my kids than they are to me in age. And they're concerned about all these issues. And they're focused on building businesses to try to address this. So, you know, that's hopeful, and it's inspiring, and, you know, so it gives us hope for the future. But, you know, to kind of answer the question, yeah, technology is going to be essential in how we, you know, address this issue. I mean, the built environment is the platform of our modern existence, right? And it's, you know, going to have challenges thrown at it that we can't even imagine. So, you know, that's you know, technology and innovation, and vertically integrating all of that into a business plan, right? Because we're not an impact fund. We're looking to make money for our limited partners, right? But the fact is that there's a business model and money to be made doing this. So it gives us hope.
Well, thank you. I think, you know, there's some broad perspectives here on the subject matter. I'm just going to throw in last and not least, but 5G, which we all know and have read about. You know, we've all witnessed the internet. We witnessed the effect of the iPhone, these disruptive movements, if you will, and how they've changed the way we live and work. 5G is not to be taken lightly. It's something that, you know, we thought of wireless as sort of voice to then, you know, texting and then sort of data centric. But 5G represents a whole paradigm shift that I think we're all, you know, going to get thrust into in the next few years. And so where I see this sort of fitting in is that it's going to become central to, I think, a lot of what we were discussing here in terms of how people communicate in and out of spaces, and from, you know, as, you know, mobile workers, and it's going to become central to all kinds of new sort of monetization and operational plays that exist within the commercial real estate space. So thank you, everyone. Thanks each of you for this panel, and
Thank you.
yeah. Any questions?